Hi guys, and welcome to Bev's Repair Bench. You can see that today we are not on the bench, we're actually out in the shop. I had a request a while back for a shop tour. One of the guys that follows me pretty regularly was curious about exactly what I do, and if you follow me on Instagram and subscribe to me on YouTube, you may have noticed that my job seems to allow me a little bit more freedom than might be considered normal, and there's a very good reason for that. So I figured I would kind of go into that and also kind of show you around the shop, because I have access to a lot of really cool equipment, fabrication equipment, that allows me to do a lot of the cool things that I do. Not only for the channel and for things like 3D printing, but also at work. My job title, official job title, is Special Projects Manager. And that entails a whole lot of different stuff. Mainly in the main line of being a Special Projects Manager, I will do a lot of our in-house designs and things like that. If we have a customer that comes in that has an idea that wants to do something or has a rough prototype, then most of the time I'll be the one that they get, basically put with to either design something from scratch or take an existing piece and not necessarily to say reverse engineer it, but to actually make it to where it's fabrication friendly, to where it's more efficient to make in large quantities, to streamline the design itself, things like that. And that's basically the special projects part of it. I'll also do a lot of our in-house efficiency procedures, things like that, things that make us better fabricators. So if we have a problem where we're having issues with quality that may need to be addressed through getting different toolings for things like that, and basically figuring out ways to make our process more efficient and have better quality. So that's, as a special projects manager, that's basically what I do. To get deeper into the things that I really do, I'm also a heavy equipment operator. So luckily not the main one, because I wear a lot of hats. But operating is probably one of my favorite ones. I love crane operating. I think anyone who's ever operated cranes kind of loves it. At least I haven't heard of anyone hating it. And I run the forklifts. When we do civil type projects, which are 99% in-house, such as like pouring cement, things like that, I'll run heavy equipment. And I'll also do a little bit of the civil engineering, what little is required of it. I'm not an engineer. I do have to stress that. I am more of a glorified designer and draftsman. I don't have any type of college education, anything like that. In fact, my highest education is that I have a GED, but I've managed to carve a hole for myself and do things that very few people that I know of do for a living. Behind me you can actually see, this is one of our water jets, and another part of what I do is almost all around on these things, from designing parts and programming the machine, which I actually do from my office and can send stuff to a server, and working on it. I rarely operate it. I can operate it. Probably not the best at operating it. I'm also not the best at programming it, but I can do it fairly well. But I do a lot of maintenance on here. Really like tricky troubleshooting type stuff, things like that. Basically, I'm the buffer between the manager of this shop, who can do a lot of the troubleshooting and things like that, and actually getting a tech out here. If I can't fix it, then it's time to get a tech out. But it is really fun to work on. It's a really awesome machine to see operate. I mean, right now we've got some, it looks like 1.5-inch plate on here that this thing cuts through like nothing. It takes a long time, but it can cut through just about anything. So this is a really neat part of our shop. We actually have 3 of these machines. 2 of them are what are just called the, what are these? The Mach 3s? Yeah. That have dynamic cutting, so they can do scarf correction to where your cuts are always 90 degrees. And we do actually have a XD cutting head outside that doesn't work, which I think I'll kind of maybe do a couple of videos about trying to get that thing running. That can do 5-axis cutting. So you can do all kind of really neat stuff with that. Alright, so let's talk a little bit more about why I have so much freedom in this shop to do things that are unconventional. Like I literally have a personal 3D printer at my shop. I have an entire lab that has very little to do with work in my office. And the reason that I'm able to do that is because this company was actually started by my grandpa in, I think, 85 or 86. And his story to why he started it is that it was in the middle of the oil field basically crashing, and his trade was being a fitter and a welder, and he was excellent at it, really, really great at it. And he couldn't find a job, and he said, well, you know, I know a few other guys that are excellent fitters and welders. He said, I know a few people that would pay me to do work. So he started his own business, and it was in a shed in his backyard for a long time. And my dad is actually the current owner and president, and he came in, I think, in the early 90s. I never did get solid years on when all this happened, but he came in the early 90s and worked for a little while whenever he got out of the military. And him and my grandpa actually had a falling out about some business stuff. And so he went find another job for a little while. And my grandpa asked him if he could come back and help him out. And the deal was that he would come and he would help him, but he had to move out of his backyard. They had to find a building. And it was a little bit of a back and forth, but eventually he agreed to it. And so my dad found a building and bought it, and the company officially became Kidder Incorporated, which is actually our last name. It was Kidder Welding and Repair, and it became Kidder Incorporated as an official business. And since then, it's been growing. And it's had some tough times, and it's had some great times, and right now is kind of one of those in-betweenish times, but we seem to have a really good future ahead of us. Now, for those of you thinking that I might have a little bit of, boss's son syndrome, first of all, you're justified for thinking that. I know a lot of people, trust me, through the years, I've seen plenty of them come through that are actually kind of prejudiced against, the owner's son, working in the shop, because, they often feel entitled and, they're spoiled and things like that. And granted, this is a self-evaluated opinion, but I've started here, I was 16, I was about to turn 17 years old. And I started here, and I remember my first day in the middle of the summer was to come out and start pulling weeds on the fence and taking care of grass and sweeping the floors and taking out trash and things like that. And that was 13 years ago. God, I'm getting old, aren't I? That's disappointing. But that was 13 years ago, and I have, made my way through the ranks. And like I said, I kind of created a place for myself here just by doing something that no one else does. And I've done it all, you know, from being a helper and cleaning up after people to learning how to fit and learning how to be a mechanic and work on equipment a lot. We didn't really have a mechanic whenever I started working here, and so I started learning. And whenever we had mechanics on and off work for us, I would learn everything I could from them, and I would research. And so I got really good at learning, and that actually became a really powerful tool for me to get where I am today, is by knowing how to learn. And when new processes, you know, become available, and learning how to use those things, and learning how to do stuff with a water jet, and learning how to draw on CAD, and, you know, learning methods that keep the shop evolving. So, you know, I might have a little bit of entitlement, but I consider that I just take advantage of, you know, the opportunity that I have. And I don't think that that's being spoiled or anything like that. I think that that's smart. And if this is getting a little bit off the beaten path and I'm a little defensive, I completely apologize for that. But I just kind of feel like it has to be said. Now, with all that being said, I 100% enjoy what I do. I have bad days just like everybody else does, but I've never had a day that I left work and said, I hated today, or, you know, I didn't learn something, or there wasn't some part of what I did that I enjoy. Even days where I'm out in the hot sun all day, you know, jumping up and down off of the crane and, you know, digging with a shovel or anything like that, at the end of the day, it's all enjoyable to me. So that's another reason that I get, you know, a little bit more freedom than most people normally would at a job like this, is because, you know, there's so many things that I do and so many things that I enjoy doing, and a lot of the things that are my hobbies, like electronics, 3D printing, things like that, you know, if you look hard enough, you can find places to fit those hobbies into what you do for a living. I like to tell people, I don't have a job. I have a hobby that just so happens to pay my bills. So, you know, and there are days where I have to convince myself that that is the truth, but those are few and far between. So I think that about does that for this introduction. I apologize if it's a little bit long. And by the way, this is me. I don't think you've ever seen this much of me on video before. And let's go through onto we'll kind of do a little circle in this shop. It's pretty small. And then we'll move on to the next buildings. So as I've already mentioned, these are two of our water jets. These are the two in this building, and there's an awning outside that the third one is actually under. And they are Flow Mach 3s. And the table size is 2 meter by 4 meter, I want to say, with like 7 inches of Z height. So there's a lot of cut capacity in here. We will mostly use 10-foot plates or 12-foot plates to lay on here, or to lay on the machines to cut. And we cut all sorts of stuff. That was one of the reasons that we chose to use water jets rather than laser or plasma or oxyacetylene. We wanted something that was very versatile and that had a really good quality cut edge and was also a cold cutting method. You know, a lot of times you can't use, for instance, plasma or oxyacetylene on pad eyes that are engineered. A lot of people don't want them flame cut because the heat effect zone, you know, kind of destroys the properties of that pad eye around that hole. With water jetting, you can. You can't flame cut, but you can do a cold cutting process like water jetting. And it cuts like I said, not just stainless steel and aluminum and, carbon steel, but, wrought iron, rubber, what else have we cut? Stone. It's just almost any material you can put up there, you can cut, except for, I think, tempered glass, certain types of ceramics. It's a really versatile cutting machine. They are very maintenance intensive, and you do have an expensive consumable in garnet, and you also have to dispose of that consumable, which can be kind of a hassle whenever you're not somewhere where you have an easy spot where you can just basically dump it. It is a non-hazardous consumable as long as you're not cutting hazardous material, but it's still a challenge to keep the tables clear and clean and have a spot to dispose of all of this waste that you're producing. But other than that, a really awesome cutting method. And we can swing around here and see the second one. Right here is our sheet metal rack that we keep. This is all of our water jet, all the material that the water jet uses fairly commonly. There's all sorts of stuff in there, and a lot of times we'll actually have to order material, but this is kind of just our stock that just the water jet uses. You can also see this is a manual sheet metal shear. We also have a small 4-foot press brake, and then around the corner we have I think it's a 10 or a 12-foot press brake for sheet metal. We use this on our really thin stuff, basically things that are below 1/8, and we have that corner way in the back over there that you can barely see, that really big table. That is our sheet metal specialist that works in this corner in this shop. And we also have, let me move. We have 2 stations for welders, but we only have one in the corner right now. And that's pretty much all there is to this particular shop. We do have 3 other shops that we'll kind of take a look at. This is the back side of the water jets. This is one of the 50 horse intensifiers that we run. They do make 100 horse, and then they also make like the little triplex type ones. This is actually a hydraulic intensifier type. That is the hopper that we use for our garnet, and in the back is a control cabinet, and also over there is our water softener, because for some reason you have to put salt in the water to run the water jet, and the corrosion is just, it's fantastic. I really see the benefit in making your water corrosive. Okay, this is our third water jet. Like I said, this is the 5-axis, the XD one, and it's broken. We actually bought it broken. I feel like I'm telling you guys, I'm addicted to broken things. But luckily I didn't buy this one. We got it for a really great deal, still more than I could personally afford. But we have been we'll fix a little bit at a time on it, and we're slowly getting it ready to be put into service. Once things are really rocking and rolling again, we'll actually get the tech out here, and they'll basically give this thing the full work through and get it cutting at 100%, ready to go. In the back there, that locker is actually what we call the mechanics locker. I keep just a bunch of random stuff in there, tools that I hardly use, some spare parts, things like that. And this awning will probably get closed in one day, but today it is storage. And there's our scrap bin over there. There's the forklift, one of our forklifts. But right now it's being used for storage of a really large job that we're waiting to get shipped out. It has a whole bunch of components to it. In the background over here, you can actually see that is a old press brake, and we'll move around to get a better look at it. All right, this is actually an old press brake that my grandfather built probably 30 years ago. He needed to be able to, bend metal and rod, sheet metal and rods and things like that. And so he actually built this thing from scratch, and it's been a workhorse. It's semi-retired now. It only gets used for really kind of niche applications because we have upgraded to much better things. But it still works. It's still a awesome little machine, and it's kind of nostalgic. So I don't know if we'll ever tell this thing goodbye. I think we'll always have it almost as a museum piece. Okay, so from our water jet machine, if we swing around here, this is still underneath that awning. You can see here we actually have a Tumbler, which is a deburring piece of equipment. It's basically a whole bunch of rocks that tumble around in a little solution of water and some other kind of like a lubricant, basically. Let's see if we can get a close-up look at that. And we'll throw a lot of our water cut parts in there just to kind of deburr them. A lot of people really like the surface finish that a Tumbler leaves. I am not a fan of it. It looks like a whole bunch of micro scratches. So, man. This is our Bead Blaster. If you followed me on Instagram, and yes, guys, I'm going to plug Instagram every single video until I get 1,017,000,000 followers. But if you follow me on Instagram, you'll see that I was using this machine the other day to bead blast some stainless steel parts. I really like the finish that it gives stainless steel, and it's really a popular thing to do in subsea type stuff, to give an anti-glare finish for anti-glare. I say anti. A lot of people say anti. But to give an anti-glare finish to parts that when an ROV or a diver is going to shine their light on it, it's not reflecting back in the face plate or the camera and, ruining what they're seeing. Because it's a lot more difficult to get away from things like that whenever you're subsea than, whenever you're just out in the world. All right, so this is our second building. We normally call this one the back shop. You may hear a little bit of echoiness. It's pretty quiet in here today. It's actually a little disconcerting because I never really hear it this quiet. But this is our main and largest building. This houses our main stock of aluminum extrusions and plates, our shear, our press brake, our iron worker, which you can actually see almost center screen there, that green thing. And it's where the bulk of our larger fabrication projects get done. And we'll kind of swing through and look at stuff. You can see at the top that is a 10-ton overhead crane. And we actually have two cranes running the same bridge. You can see here, this is actually a much older double beam overhead hoist rather than an underslung, which the gaffy over there is. Really useful cranes. Like I said, that's our metal worker. I think that's a 120-ton Piranha dual station, so you can actually have two people working at one time on it. And if we swing around, that's the back side of our press brake. We'll get a closer look at that later. We have a cold saw. This is aluminum only that we use for cutting a lot of our extrusions. And if we swing back around, sorry, this is a little fast. This is our extrusion stockpile. Let me move out of the way of the fan. This is just about all of our more commonly used aluminum extrusions, pipes, square tubes, rectangular tubes, H-beams, I-beams, channels, mechanical tubing, things like that. This is our aluminum plate, although we do keep a little bit of mixed material in there. This is kind of our ready stock, close by our shear. So it'll actually we'll actually bring it into the shear, cut it to size, and then everything kind of flows out towards that door. So where I'm standing is actually where we will receive our trucks with our material, and it kind of gives us a nice, most of the time, a one-way street to get projects out of the door. All right, this is our shear. It is, what is it? I think it's like exactly 10-foot cut width, which sometimes is barely enough. There are times where we're actually longer than that. It is an Atlantic, and I will say this about Atlantic: you don't want to own one. This thing, I don't even want to. If you want me to go into any of this equipment and take a closer look at it, just drop something into the comments, and I'll do a specific little tour of that piece of equipment if you're interested. But just so you know, Atlantic sucks. This is our press brake. It is also a 10-foot wide width, although we can only do 8 feet inside of the stands. So we're basically limited to a 12-inch flange at 10-foot wide. And 8 feet, we are infinite, technically. This is an AccuPress Edge. This has been an amazing machine. I want to say it is... Oh man, how old is this thing? I think it's 8 years old, maybe something like that. But it has really been a great, really reliable machine. It is CNC, so you know you can dial in your angles and all that and get really precise flange widths, and it's a really good machine. I've really liked this machine. We've already talked about the Piranha. It has a notching station that's going to be over there to the left, shearing station in the middle, and then a punching station off to the left. I said that totally backwards. That's all the way to the right. I'm sorry. Very, very awesome quality machine. I really like Piranhas. They are really just workhorse machines. All right, swinging around from the Piranha, we have a laydown saw. This is a 10-inch hide mech laydown saw. Once again, hide mech sucks, just like Atlantic. I don't like those saws. And their larger ones may be better, but the smaller ones, meh. And back there is an 8-inch hide mech, which honestly is better than the 10-inch. We have an M-Car roller. It's a 4-foot wide roller, and it can roll up to 5/16, I think is the thickest that it's supposed to roll. Although we'll do a little bit thicker in narrow strip stuff. And we also have the end shafts where you can actually put extrusion rollers on it, so that if you have to roll like a piece of angle iron or something like that, you can do smaller dimensional stuff in extrusions. This is a project that is just about to the point of being ready for FATs. That steel down there is another big piece of the project you saw underneath the awning that is waiting to get shipped out. This is a barge. I think this is a 40-foot barge, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's a 40 by 10. We built a decent bit of these. These are just kind of small work barges that go all over the country, that our customer sells them to all sorts of people. Really, really good work, really easy to build, and a really rock solid little barge. You can see that pipe behind it is actually a specialty spreader bar. I believe that is actually going to go subsea for subsea pipeline removal, if I'm not mistaken. We do a whole bunch of crazy stuff here. I mean, there's very little in fabrication that we won't do. Alright, so these are just general workstations. It's the weekend, so everything's kind of cleaned up right now. Well, mostly cleaned up. The floor is swept, so that's something. That yellow box over there, that is an ESAB plasma. Yeah, ESAB, you also are kind of miserable. Man, that's 3 brands already that I don't like. This is not looking good. Those 3 machines stacked there, those are Lincoln welding machines, which are actually giant DC power supplies, guys. That's really tempting for me to do crazy stuff, but I won't. Those are mostly going to be our steel machines. We're running not LN7s, but kind of an LN7 like third or fourth generation wire feeder for our flux core and our short arc. To the left, that blue machine, that is a Miller Aluma feed. Those have been some really, really good machines. They are a little bit fiddly on maintenance. You know, you have to keep a good fresh liner in them, but they are excellent aluminum welding machines. Really, really like them. The stuff on the sawhorses over there, I'm not sure what those are, and the things in the pallets. What are the stuff in the pallets? I think those are TV stands on the pallets. What else? Oh, there's a drill press back there, but we'll see stuff more impressive than that. And basically, this will just swing around into more workstations, which this bar just kind of dominating the workstations right now. Into that door over there, and that's going to lead to our front shop. All right, this is our front shop, and this building, let me go turn the lights on first. All right, so this is what we call our front shop, and this building, this section, is actually the original Kidder Incorporated building. The back shop that you were actually just in is an addition that we made. Once again, I don't know the years. I'm gonna write a list and get all these years, but I don't think I'm gonna put that in this video. But this is actually the original building that my dad found and purchased to move Kidder Incorporated out of the backyard and into something that was official. One of the lights just kicked on. But this, I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, I think this is a 65 by 40 or 80 by 40 foot building. And the projects that I've seen come out of this building, because you got to remember, I've been coming around here since I was 4 years old, are mind-blowing. We get people that have, you know, giant customers that come through, and they can't believe the projects that we can produce in the kind of limited amount of space we have. But this building is where, at least for me coming into it, this is where it's all started. And I like it. I don't know why, but I really do. But let's kind of look at stuff. So, there's really not a whole lot to see in this shop. It is mostly just workstations. All this material on the floor here and on the floor here, you can actually see in the background over there, these are actually more components for those TV stands that we saw earlier on the pallets. We build a whole lot of these, probably 400 a year if I'm not mistaken. And in the background, we'll go get a closer look. Those are some stand-up blockers. But I want to say we have 1, 2, 3, I think we have 5 workstations in this shop. All right, so if we look off kind of to the left of where we were, this shop is the only shop that we actually do TIG welding processes in. This is our Lincoln Electric TIG machine, and if we swing over to the right, we have a Miller TIG machine. And when I was welding TIG, well, the little welding that I did, which I was not extremely good at, TIG was actually my favorite process, simply because it was just, there was so much control there. You can control your stick going in, you can control your heat and all that stuff. I am ironically by no means a good welder, but TIG was my favorite process. And strangely enough, the one that I was best at, which is still not setting the bar very high. Okay, right here you can see this is one of our stand-up lockers that we build. This is a double door locker. This one, I'm not sure exactly what the end purpose is for it, but we do build a lot of them for specific purposes, and we build a lot of them for just general storage reasons. I want to say this one's a 6 foot tall by 5 feet wide by 2 feet deep, maybe something along those lines. But they get anchored to the floor most of the time of wherever they end up at, so they won't tip over. This is an identical one. You can look on the floor. You can actually see these are pipe hangers that they clamp around a pipe and they can actually hang. I'm not sure if it's subsea or what, but I know they're pipe hangers. And over there in the back, that is our bolt bin where we keep a lot of our just ready at hand bolts and fasteners that we use. Okay, so I think now we'll go outside and take a look at the test bed. So this is our load test bed. It is a 175,000 pound vertical test bed, obviously, if you can see what's written on the header. You can also see our logo to the left of it. That's really nice. But it is a really great piece of equipment. We actually built this. You can see the yellow section. That was the original size. And it only had about a 20-foot lift height on it. And there's a 6-foot ram at the top of it that actually does your pulling, which we'll go into load testing in a minute. But it was just too short for so many things. And we actually built 2 of these, one for a customer and one for us. I don't remember exactly what the deal was. I think the customer gave us a deal on helping design it, and we gave them a deal on fabricating the 2 of them, fabricating theirs, and if we could fabricate one too. But we actually found that ours was too short, so we fabricated 10-foot extensions, which you can actually see in black there, which makes it so much better, so much more versatile to use. And they didn't extend theirs, but that's a side story. But anyways, it is, I want to say 30 feet by, like basically you could say, to put it in 3D printing terms, there's a 30-foot Z height, and there's a 30-foot X height, and then really we can probably call it 60 foot of Y axis, basically, I would say. So we can easily set 60-foot frames and strap it down and test it if we need to. The bed of it is actually an I-beam frame. It's probably really hard to tell, but there's kind of a H shape of I-beams down there that are screw piled and cemented in place, and it uses standard ISO lockdowns to actually lock down pieces of equipment to test. And we've built all sorts of adapters and things like that. Let's go take a look at. Okay, so these are a lot of the frames and beams and adapters that we use for our load testing. You can see right in the center there, that big metal block. That's actually an adjustable clump weight. It weighs 10,000 pounds, and we can remove weights and fine tune it to do load testing. We also use it as hold down weights if you're trying to push bows out of metal and things like that. I don't want to brag, but a certain person that you might have seen in this video designed that. This is a piece of equipment we use to load test boxes. It will lock down to the test bed, and the box will actually go inside of that little drop down to where you're putting a realistic load on the box for testing. And if you're not familiar with load testing, it is basically to where you design a piece of equipment to be able to withstand this much weight, and you put more weight than that in it to certify that it is actually able to handle it, in the simplest of terms. This is our drop plate rack for steel. A lot of our pieces that we use for jobs that we have extra left over, we'll put it here. And this is our steel extrusion rack, and there's actually another steel extrusion rack behind it that we're also keeping like timbers and things like that on. That's one of our main gates. I hope my camera exposure is doing pretty good with this. This is one of our Galleon 150 FAs. They're 15-ton. I believe they're actually rated as a carry deck class of crane. We just call them cherry pickers. As opposed to most people who say a cherry picker is a man lift, we call these types of cranes cherry pickers. And we've got just a bunch of random little projects there. That is our machine shop's stock rack there that they keep a whole bunch of, you know, round rod and things like that in. That is another road going out. That back there is our quality shop. And this little shack here is actually the control room for the test bed, which we can go take a look at that. Before we take a look at the control shack, this is actually the HPU that powers our hydraulic test bed. And this is something on my to-do list to totally scrap and make a better one. I actually built this, but I didn't design it. I know that's kind of odd to say. But basically what happened was the customer that designed the bed just picked out a whole bunch of components, and I got a box full of components and not even a note that said, screw you, build it yourself. And so I did the best I could, and it works, but it works very slowly, very noisily, and it's just really, really inefficient. It's a 15 horsepower motor driving I think a 5 GPM, 3,500 PSI pump, and it's horrible. It really is, guys. One day I'm just going to make one that is meant to do what it's meant to do. Alright, so this is the control shack for the load test bed, and right now they have a blind in the way. They must have just pulled out the shop the other day. It'll get removed before we do any testing. But it's got a good view of the test bed and also a good view outside so you can see any people approaching, anything like that. This is the main control panel. You can see to the right is the gauge that actually tells us how much hydraulic pressure we're applying. The one to the left is not connected right now. I did actually get to design this, and I designed it kind of in the mindset of upgrading later to a system that 2 gauges would actually make sense. You can also see there's a regulator. That's that little yellow thing. The 110 power, there's normally going to be a laptop sitting on this desk, and that laptop is actually connected to the load cell, which tells us how much tension we're actually applying. So there's no math involved in figuring out hydraulic pressure versus tension. There is an actual certified dynamometer on the test bed itself. It's actually hanging from the clevis. I'll probably circle it in the video or something like that. You can actually see that little box there. That is an A to D converter for that load cell, and those are direction control switches and inside and outside depending on which control box you want to use. Impacts for assembling and disassembling fixtures, and a printer for printing out certifications. So these are pretty neat. These are actually some boilers that we build, and not like steam pressure boilers. These are actually for seafood, crawfish and crabs, or crayfish. Everybody else wants to call them crayfish. We call them crawfish down here. But it's made to where you can open it up, and the basket actually will tilt up and then lock, so you can let them drain, and then you flip them and they come out of the lid and go into an ice chest or whatever. Over here we have a little hydraulic bearing press, ice machine. This door leads in our machine shop. We'll see that in a little bit. Some scrap boxes, our diesel tank. Really not much out here. Pallet racks with stuff that's waiting to ship, stuff that may have just come in. Our quality awning, we'll go take a closer look at that because there's something really important under there. And this is all our gases, our oxygen, acetylene, argon, propane, air compressors over there in the back, things like that. I think that I've done a video here before. What was it? I think I did the multimeter tutorial here. But it's in sore need of cleaning right now. But this is actually my toolboxes. I have a big Milwaukee Toolbox, and this is actually a Sunex roll cart towards the front here. These hold all of my everyday type stuff. Whoops, sorry about that. These hold the tools that I use, you know, for doing mechanic work and things like that. Zoom out. Sorry. And it's messy, just like my actual repair bench is. But there is all sorts of junk in there. If y'all want closer looks at that, y'all drop comments because I can go through that for 5 hours. But this is whenever I'm working outside, this is where I'm pulling tools from. Okay, so this is going to be the last section of the tour. This is our machine shop, which is actually a sister company. It's in the same yard. But it's still part owner is it. I don't know. I didn't get into the details of it. I don't really think it's a good thing to do for this tour. But it is a mostly CNC machine shop. The only manual machine they have is in that back room over there, which is a lathe, and it's a pretty small one. But we may go look at that in a minute because there's also a wire EDM back there that's pretty cool. But this is the largest machine. It's a Mazak Intergrex I400S. I don't do machine stuff. I don't have a whole lot to do with this part of the shop at all. So I'm sorry if this is really vague on details because I don't really know anything about these machines. But this is one of them. I know this is a lathe that has like a some kind of special head on it, and I don't know. It's like a 6-axis machine or something. I honestly don't know. But we have that one. Over here we have a little CNC lathe. Also, everything else besides the Mazak, everything CNC is Haas, which seem like they've been really great machines. I know they're really popular. But that is it's a little 30 horsepower CNC lathe. This is the smallest CNC machine we have, VF2. And then we have that's a mill. I'm sorry, I keep saying machine, but it's a CNC mill. We have a VF4. And then the largest is the VF6. The VF6, I want to say, is close to 15 years old. And it actually just got a new transmission. In fact, I'll swing around. You can see on the floor we still have the old motor and transmission sitting, waiting to get whatever is going to get done with it. I don't know if they refurbished these or not. Pretty sure that the motor itself is considered obsolete now. But anyways, it's just got a new motor and transmission. All right, let's go look at the lathe and the EDM. We got to give the lights a minute to come on. Okay, so this is the manual lathe. It's an Acra 2260. I want to say it's like an 18-inch swing or something like that. I honestly don't know, guys. But if you're really curious about it, just like I said, let me know in the comments and I'll get more information on it. It seems to be an okay lathe. I think we've only had it for 4 or 5 years, possibly. It does have a problem with a limit switch getting full of trash. But once you kind of know about that, then it's pretty easy to avoid. You just have to know to pull the cover and clean it every once in a while. We've got a little jet drill press that they use for just drilling little holes, cleaning stuff out, things like that. You can probably hear a hissing coming from a flex arm with a tap machine on it. That's pretty handy. And if we swing around this way, and we got to move a little bit. This is a drill bit sharpener. That thing is awesome. And I know it was really, really expensive, but it is paid for itself. There's been days back when I was a helper where I would just get boxes of dull drill bits, and I've sat here for a week straight using this thing, and it's really, really a valuable tool if you do a lot of drilling. Right here we have a Mitsubishi wire Edm machine. It seems okay. I don't mess with it at all. This is actually owned by a third company that that's another whole different thing. But basically, a third company leases this space, and we have access to a wire EDM machine fairly readily. So it can do some pretty cool stuff. It cuts a lot more accurate than a water jet, but it's also pretty slow, like a lot slower. So, but it's it's a cool little piece of technology. And there's a little tumbler back there. I think that is just about it for the tour, guys. So thanks for watching, and once again, if you want to know more about anything in particular, just let me know, and I'll try to get more information on it and do a in-depth tour of whatever certain thing that y'all want to look at. So thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, follow me on Instagram, tip your waitresses, spay and neuter your pets, all that stuff. And I'll see y'all in the next video.